Peace, everybody. For the month of November 2021, we have a zine out with SAVIE OTR featuring Merch, Lab Rat, Ruettes, Too Much, Leech, Yamo, and Dr. Dax. The zine is only available through our Patreon and documents SAVIE's graffiti from trains to the high spots he's well known for. As many of you know, we've used all of our Patreon proceeds to help out people within our scene and communities in need. People who aren't rich, are in need of help, and are near and dear to our community. The bank was going to repo Charlie the Hustler's RV, so we paid off Charlie's debt to the bank so they didn't repo his home and make him homeless. Bat was arrested and acquired legal fees, so we paid Bat's legal fees and sent Bat zines to everybody who donated. We helped pay off the last of Hurt's restitution money so his 11-year-long parole could come to an end, using a print of Hurt's day in court to raise money for that. We donated 6,000 meals to the LA Regional Food Bank and sent Haler patches to everybody who donated. And most recently, we held a food drive in New York at Tompkins Square Park, handing out plant-based meals to the community, and sent out Rebo LNE zines to everybody who donated. That's what we've done with all of our Patreon proceeds. The link to our Patreon is in our Instagram bio, website, and description of this episode, and the SAVIE OTR zines are only available through our Patreon. Peace and love to everybody who listens and everybody who supports us and helps make everything I just named possible. It's been nothing short of an honor and a blessing for us to be able to use this platform as a vehicle to helping out people who have helped us out when we needed it the most, as well as communities in need. So enjoy the episode. Peace. All right, so I'm just going to start it off with a quote. And that is that all that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. And that's a quote from the Dhammapada, which is one of the traditional Buddhist texts. And I guess my starting question is, do we have control of our thoughts? Because seeing as that's a quote from a Buddhist text, a lot of like the Buddhist meditation techniques talk about understanding that you really can't stop the flow of your thoughts and just observing them and just seeing them, letting go of them, and realizing that not even your own thoughts can you hold on to, which is interesting to me because then it seems like we don't really have control of our own thoughts, but then this text says that all we are is the result of what we have thought. So I guess my question to start off is, what do you think about us having control of our thoughts?
Well, yeah, you can't really have control over thinking. Thinking is going to happen. I think what it comes down to is how you respond to the thinking. You know, some thoughts are helpful, some aren't, and some are just kind of neutral. Usually, we'll talk about in Buddhist circles. But again, I think it's about, like Thich Nhat Hanh will describe thoughts as like seeds, and you can choose to water them or not. You know what I mean? And some you want to flower, and some you want to just let them die. So it's really more about, in meditation practice, say, or in mindfulness practice, having the ability to be objective with your thoughts and choose wisely which ones you water and which ones you don't, right? So it's not so much a matter of you're controlling your thoughts, it's more you're controlling your response to the thoughts, right?
Do you think it's possible, at least for me, I've never had like a teacher in terms of like a spiritual guide. I've just kind of read the books in a wide variety of them, maybe read different translations or just critiques on them. And when I first started reading them, I'm like, okay, so what you want to do is you want to put an end to all thoughts. You think of like, at least how I thought of it was like at first, kind of like just that monk in solitude who can really just put an end to all thoughts. And
well,
I tried.
Really,
and it's like,
though.
Yeah.
What I've found in doing like those week-long silent retreats, there can be a lot of time between thoughts. A lot of time. But inevitably, thinking will come. And again, I don't think even the most accomplished practitioners of sitting meditation would tell you that they are able to control their thoughts. Again, it's the reaction, and also how much time you give it. Like on a retreat, any thought, no matter what it is, we're taught to let it go immediately and come back to our breath. So in that practice, you just learn how to do just that. Whatever comes up, just let it go, you know? But then in real life, we need to make decisions, so to speak, about, you know, what we do. We can't let every thought go or we'd be fucked, you know?
During the silent retreats, were you mostly in solitude, or like were you around people? Because I feel like interacting with people would kind of like cloud your mind in a way, no?
It does. Usually how it goes on a retreat, the size of the group can vary, for sure. I like ones where there's maybe 20 to 30 practitioners on a single retreat. You're not supposed to look each other in the eye at all. Certainly not supposed to talk to each other. We practice noble silence, so it's like if you really need to say something, you should say it, you know. But you find that most things you think you need to bring up, you don't, you know. So, and I think it's helpful to have the group. Even like the Buddha describes the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Sangha being the last one is the community of Buddhists. So it's just as important, say, as the teachings of the Buddha or finding the Buddha within yourself, which would cover the other jewels. You know what I mean? So it's important, you know. Even, I mean, that's a classic saying, you know, if you're not going to get any smarter unless you hang out with people that are smarter than you, you know? So it's just this kind of, also like the inward work of Buddhist practice can be really, really heavy, and it can be nice to know that there's other people around you on a retreat going through the same difficult stuff, but we're all there to work on ourselves and to support each other, even though we're not talking to each other or looking at each other. It's just, you feel it.
From what you've experienced, like let's say you take someone that works in the middle of Manhattan, like at a desk job that's all around noise every day, like what have you seen when they go to that environment? For example, like a silent retreat, were there those types of people that were like changing their life into the complete opposite, or trying it out at least?
Yeah, I mean, in general, regardless of kind of where you're coming from in life, it's going to open up new ways of understanding your life and your place in it. And again, your thinking mind and your heart, you know, all that kind of stuff. You know, everybody reacts differently too, you know. Some people can kind of just cruise through a retreat and not burst into tears once, you know. But like me, I end up doing it a few times throughout the day. It just happens.
You burst into tears a few times throughout the day?
Oh, sure. Especially on a retreat, but just in general life, kind of, yeah. I think that might be a part of the work that I've done. Usually it's music, too, or a movie, or... Yeah, it's usually music or a movie. It's like tears of joy, you know? I very rarely cry out of sadness. It's usually just these weird situations where all of a sudden I'll just start tearing up, you know? It's almost corny. But I think it's just a byproduct of doing those retreats and things and just being kind of soft and open to the world, you know?
What made you want to go on a silent retreat in the first place? You know, a lot of people, they're going to say, why the fuck would I want to go on silence for 1 week? What's the point of that? What was the point of it for you?
Well, at base, the point is to remove distractions. That's what a retreat's all about. So you give up your watch, your money, you know, your phone. Again, it's not a fashion show. Nobody's looking at each other, so you dress, you know, chill. And it, you know, it's just removing distractions. So that you're at the place where you're able to observe your thinking mind quite clearly because there's no distractions. Now that's a sort of Pandora's box, because in day-to-day life, we're usually filling up our day with busy work to keep our minds away from the things that are hurting us or bothering us. So as soon as you go into silent mode and go within, all that shit comes right to the surface, and it's loud, and it can be really difficult. But again, you're around Buddhists who are dedicated to helping people alleviate that kind of stress in their lives, you know, and they have these particular techniques to help you get there, you know. But it, you know, the longer you can kind of stay on on a retreat, the deeper you'll go, the deeper into your dirt. But again, it's not a place where you're working on it. It's different than therapy, right? In therapy, you're actually talking about it. On a retreat, again, anything that comes up, your worst memories, your best memories, it doesn't matter. It's just thinking. You just let it go, you know? And I think that's why most Buddhist teachers, I think these days, if somebody has real trauma that they're trying to work through or addictions, to do Buddhist practice in addition to therapy. Normally, Buddhist practice, I don't know. It you know, it has its limitations on some level. Although I think if people really, really just dedicate themselves to it, they'll, I don't know. It's hard to say that therapy in combination with meditation, because, you know, that's the whole thing with Thich Nhat Hanh's teachings in particular. He really coined the phrase mindfulness. I think part of that was out of this recognition that just sitting in meditation on a cushion and getting good at that doesn't really prepare you for taking that out into the world, right? There's a lot of people that are awesome meditators but are assholes, you know, like still egotistical as fuck. So he was just like, there needs to be some sort of way to transition from the cushion, you know, formal practice to, you know, living in the real world.
Yeah, because essentially if you can be calm while meditating, well, that only helps you for that 1 hour, 2 hours that you're doing it, 30 minutes. Whereas if that ends there and you go into the real world, then what is the purpose of being calm and compassionate when you're completely alone? But then when you're in front of people being aggravated, it's not. What is it?
Exactly. That's exactly what mindfulness is about, you know, at least to me, from learning that from him in person, you know. And it's just about concentration, you know, like the formal sitting meditation practice that I do is called Vipassana, and it's, you know, just coming back to the breath, you know. But mindfulness is really taking that where you're just taking one thing at a time, so to speak, and taking that into the real world. So he'd be like, when you're washing dishes, only wash the dishes. If you're thinking about something, stop thinking, come back to the dishes. Same time when you're on the toilet, when you're eating, drinking, you know, all those, like taking a shower, the basic things that we do every day can be these moments of meditation, you know, and that's important.
Do you think you called one of the reasons that you go to a retreat of silence and just to a setting of like a solid sangha is just to rid yourself of distractions. Distractions being the watch, distractions being the hat that you don't really need, the distractions being do you think that these distractions, which is pretty much like the material world, the materials around us, serve any purpose of advancing our spirit, or the only purpose they serve is like this distraction, aside from their material use of like this paper, I have a use for it?
Well, can you rephrase the question for me?
So like, no worries.
I'm
so
just
like,
trying to think how to approach an answer for that.
Yeah. So let's say that there's this watch, which tells me the time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this tells me the time. At the same time, my cell phone tells me the time, and also everyone around me has a cell phone. So in some theory, this does nothing but like maybe doesn't even tell. I'm not even using it to tell me the time, and all it's doing is distracting me, giving me like, oh, I kind of like how it looks, like, oh, G-Shock, fucking Casio, like has some history, like, but really it's just impeding my spiritual progress of like letting go of things that I don't really need. So what do you think?
That's the thing. I think again you have to have that discriminatory mind to determine what's a distraction and what's not. You know what I'm saying? Like for Thich Nhat Hanh, he writes a lot. He writes in lots of different languages, and he explains the Dharma in a way that people all over the world can understand, and that becomes an object, even an object, you know, in the marketplace, you know, and in that way, you know, it's still yeah, it's still part of that material world, but it's really, really, really important, you know, just as much as like food is important. I mean, yeah, it's about finding the things that are worthwhile to your mission, you know, and letting go of the stuff that's not, you know.
Yeah, and also in terms of just living a life of minimalism and living a life of like extreme minimalism, like real austerity. There's another quote from the Dhammapada, but I'm gonna just pretty much paraphrase it because I don't have it written.
Yeah.
But it just talks about how the fool who lives in austerity, eating just very small bits of food off of just blades of grass, he's not getting as far as like the person who just realizes the truth. And you know,
there is
the Buddha
definitely
himself,
something to that. Yeah.
yeah, the Buddha himself talked about how he tried extreme asceticism, tried fasting for until I'm going to reach enlightenment, and it just didn't work. So where do you think that abstination from a lot of sense pleasure comes into play?
Well, the Buddha talked about the middle path. That's like the fundamental idea, I mean, to Buddhism, where it's riding in the middle of the extremes of society and culture and life, and with an intelligent, wise mind, making the right choices, you know? So, you know, and he learned that firsthand historically. He was practicing asceticism till he damn near died, and two little kids in the story brought him rice and milk and brought him back, and he had that aha moment, like, how can I be of strong emotional and spiritual character if my body isn't strong? You know, doesn't have to get to an extreme. He just needed to be healthy, you know? And that realization really bummed out his friends who were still ascetics, you know, and were like, oh man, you sold out. You're eating regular food now. Like, that sucks. And he's like, no, let me explain. And they became his first converts, you know, his best buddies. But I think that's super important. I think of that all the time, especially now, because of how the medias work. You know, like it's so polarized, Republican or Democrat often, right? And so you're getting opposite information often, especially these days. And I just try to remind myself, stay in the middle and listen to both sides, understand what's overboard and what's valid, you know, and then make a decision from that middle place about which way to move, if it's to the left or the right, or just keep on trucking forward, you know, but beware of getting caught in extremes, you know, because again, the Buddha was nonviolent, and he knows when people get caught in extremes, that's when you have extremism and people start getting killed over ideas, which, you know, to a Buddhist is ridiculous. They're just thoughts. They're not real. You know, why kill each other over that? That's stupid.
Yeah, but no, it's like you think about the middle path. You think about it in terms of daily life. Like, for example, the vegan community, and like I don't eat meat, and I'm pretty much vegan. And when you decide, for example, like I like the fact that the Buddhist monks in a lot of communities, they just eat out of a bowl what they're given. Of course, it's not like there's pretty much no expectation when they hand their bowl. And one of the big things for me is wasting things. I do not like wasting things. So, for example, say I go to a restaurant with my family, and there's a piece of fish that legit no one's going to eat. 100% they're going to throw it away. And not only that, but if I were to eat it, it would not impede my life in terms of my lifespan or my health for pretty much any amount of time. But I don't, because I'm very married to this idea of veganism. I'm not selling out. No. But really what you're doing is now this food is being wasted. I don't necessarily think that's... I think that's a form of extremism, me personally.
Well, from what I understand historically, the Buddha didn't have a prohibition against the monks eating meat. Because of basically the reason that you're pointing out right now. If someone had leftover food, and that was all they could offer to the monks, that was very, very specific, because it was very auspicious for you to have a monk in your home. The neighbors would, you know, people would boast about it, like, oh, I have a monk staying with me, you know, and they would cook for them, and they were totally forbidden from doing that. They were basically supposed to be homeless wanderers, beggars, you know? So again, if it was really just the scraps, something they might even offer to a dog, that was perfectly acceptable to offer to the monks. Yeah. I mean, of course, everybody would know about the karma involved in offering a monk meat. But again, if your intention is correct and it really is scraps, that was okay. Totally. You know, even now, like Tibetan monks eat meat.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, totally.
And
I mean, it really
Thailand
depends
as well.
on the country, you know, and also the sect. I mean, there's even Christian sects that don't eat meat. You know what I mean? And, you know, I don't know about Islam, if there's Muslims that are vegan.
And it's really crazy. Like I went to Thailand and I had this idea of the monk who does not at any, like, they don't eat meat. This is my idea, and I go there and I see
you could find them.
Yeah.
And
And I see that some of them in their bowls they would eat meat, and I was like truly let down because of my judging mind. You know, it's like there's no such thing as absolute truth. I don't know what their story is. I don't know how the ideology behind it is, but I later found out, and I see it, and I'm like, damn, fraudulence. That's what I thought.
There's different kinds of monasteries, though, too. You know, you got to understand, in Thailand, a lot of criminals that are looking at prison time are offered to go live in a monastery. So often, some of those monasteries are full of, like, the hoods, you know, cigarette smoking, drinking, you know, and they have to live by the rules there. But again, it's like, it's a little different than, you know, like a forest tradition where they're really homeless, you know, and really practicing like the Buddha did himself, you know.
Yeah, and
there's
I feel like
all kinds of variation.
In terms of mindfulness, it is so hard to be mindful in this society. For example, I always like use the bowl of oatmeal as an example of mindfulness that we don't have. And I look at my bowl of oatmeal in the morning, and it might seem like a simple, just plant-based food. And it's like oats, then there's almond milk or oat milk or soy milk, then there's blueberries, then there's strawberries, then there's some grounded up flax seeds and chia seeds, then there's organic peanut butter. And I think to myself, for me to get all this shit, like, for me to grow this myself, it would be impossible. I would need different climates. I would need a lot of knowledge. I would need...
Yeah.
And then it's like, it helps also to decrease the judgment mind when you realize the truth of that, because then you might look at someone, let's say, like eating, like, let's say, a piece of steak or meat, which, you know, vegans are, there's no short of judgment in that.
Sure.
You might be like, this fucking guy, like, of course, like, it's just for flavor. I have like a simple life. I have like and you bring yourself up, not even noticing that what you ate for breakfast was
spiritual
one of the most...
materialism, they call that. Yeah. When it actually, your spiritual path is increasing your ego. And that's wrong, you know? So you got to really beware of that, you know, people. And that's a thing that'll happen a lot in American folks, too, where they start to boast about how spiritual they are, how good a meditator they are. And any teacher should just shut them down and be like, you're going in the wrong direction, bro.
Yeah, there's a lot of that on, like, social media, you know, like,
sure.
It's like a business now in a way, you know.
Sure.
People they jump on that because you don't really need natural talent or anything. You can just kind of come off as this image, you know what I mean? And, like, you know, people are making money, but still it kind of takes away the genuine aspect of what the core foundation of all this is about, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people out there that are kind of satisfied with a bogus preacher. You know what I mean? It's like there's levels to everything, and, you know, there's always going to be those people who can be successful spiritual leaders without any, you know, actual credentials or, you know.
Yeah, I mean, seeing the general population having an interest in this is already, you know, like a seed planted, so that's at least something something good.
Yeah, that's just it, you know. I think some people, you know, they set out to try to be like a spiritual leader, and they get a congregation, and the congregation tells them they're special and that they have power, and they just start to believe it and roll with it. I think that happens a lot, You know, because again, it's no telling what people are going to respond to, especially with that kind of like spiritual stuff.
Yeah.
You kind of assume nobody's going to listen, and then all of a sudden you've got all these ears, and you're like, oh, I must be like doing this. This is real. People are telling me this is real.
Another thing I've been thinking of is the concept of problems in your life, and I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it. So, you know, it's a widely held thing in philosophy and also just life in general that problems make you stronger. Problems help you learn through your suffering, you learn through your experiences to overcome. Even in Buddhism, since we've been talking about like in the Four Noble Truths, the first one is suffering, and through that you eventually follow down the path leading to just your ultimate freedom, I guess. So seeing the fact that problems give us an opportunity to improve ourselves is freedom renunciation of issues, or is freedom acceptance of all issues? So if you're looking for freedom, should you be trying to make your life as comfortable and pleasant as possible, and that way you're achieving like a state of happiness? Or should you be trying to live with what the problems you have in front of you, to use them to strengthen yourself so that they no longer fuck your mind up? That's my question.
That's heavy. What would be real freedom? I think it's different for every person. That's a tricky one, because on retreat I do feel quite free. I feel like it's how I kind of should be living as a human being. It's quite pleasant. Day to day I feel good and calm and connected to everything, and I'm like vibing with the animals and the trees and shit, you know. It gets silly. But when I come back home from a retreat, I realize that everything in my life is a choice, that I'm choosing to live in a certain place, work in a certain place, do a certain thing to make money, you know, even fuck with money, because on retreat you realize you don't ever have to handle money and you're perfectly fine. You know what I mean? So personally, I like the freedom of being out here in regular life and not in a monastery. You know, that's real freedom for me. Because there's still some stuff about Buddhism that I disagree with, you know? So yeah, you know, there's always pros and cons, you know? I think that's another part of that middle path thing. I'm always considering the pros and cons of kind of every situation, looking at it from every side, you know? And there's pros to monastic life, but there's some cons too. Like, you really don't have freedom to wear what you want, have your hair however you like, which, you know, on some level does develop ego. You know, but at the same time, I don't know. I can just throw on whatever. I ain't tripping. If it gets ruined, fuck it. You know, just as much as, you know, I still shop at thrift stores for most stuff. You know?
Yeah.
I don't think that inherently has to be a distraction. You know?
Yeah, and everybody has it's like you can't say that one thing is good for everybody, so you can't say that there's one type of freedom for everyone.
That's what I'm saying. You really got to figure it out for yourself. You know? A big part of it for me is also only working enough to pay my overhead every month, and then having a lot more free time as I get older to do other things, or just to rest and just enjoy the beach or whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? But that's real freedom for me.
Well, you just said earlier that when you go to these retreats and you're in solitude, you're amongst nature, you're not speaking much, you're focusing a lot on your thoughts, you come to the realization that you don't really need to fuck with money and you'll be perfectly fine. A lot of people are going to hear that and they'll be
much happier, frankly.
Much happier. A lot of people will hear that and they'll say, what are you talking about? I need to pay rent. I need to eat food. What do you mean I don't need to fuck with money? I need to fuck with money. If anything, this needs to be the thing that I need to fuck with, because money is like the substance that is equivalent to food. It's equivalent to my rent and shelter. It's equivalent to my phone, which helps me stay in contact with my relatives. So how will I not fuck with money and be perfectly fine? So what do you say to that?
Go on a retreat and find out for yourself. I mean, that's the thing. Like, we talk about communism and materialism and, all that kind of thing, And Buddhist sanghas or monasteries are for real communist. But it's small groups. It's manageable. They all have a moral system and a code that they're living by that's very, very specific. But they don't, like, once you become a monk, you're not allowed to handle money, period. So even at Thich Nhat Hanh's centers, he has lay practitioners in his office that handle all the money and stuff and they do a great service for all the monks that live there, so they don't have to touch money. And every day, everybody works a little bit. Everybody does some sort of chore for about an hour for the community, including us retreatants. And that can actually be one of the more important aspects of a retreat. What you choose to do is your volunteer work. But again, you see how it just works. You know what I mean? And it just feels so good. Like the food tastes so good because everybody in the kitchen was being mindful and was meditating and was putting the love and care into the food and that you're eating. It's like a real connection. I'd always volunteer to clean the toilets because it was very humbling to scrape shit off the walls, and to use that as the focus of my meditation practice, but also knowing I was doing a great service for my community because it was usually the bathrooms were pretty wrecked,
That's amazing because you think about scraping shit off a toilet, and in the mundane world, you're not doing a service for anyone. In your mind, you're like, this is the lowest job. And then but you use that same exact job to feel important and feel that you're helping you're doing a great service.
That's right. Nobody else wanted to volunteer for it. I'm down. I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll get on my hands and knees. Yeah, I'll do it. In silence, and I'll make sure I get it real clean. Totally. And have a lot of compassion for the people that are having diarrhea because they're eating vegan food on retreat and they're used to other stuff, the Europeans, and you know what I mean? Like it can be a little rough in that way for some people.
Do you think it's possible for society to drift away from like living under a government to move on to like a more of a commune setting, or do you think there's just so many people in this world that it's not possible?
I think that's very possible. I've been watching a lot of little videos about the Amish, and they live in America. They don't know who the president is. Yeah. Like literally, like they're not watching the news at all. They're not interacting with any of that shit, and they've been here for hundreds of years now. You know what I mean? And it's very possible. Totally. I mean, there's Buddhist communities here in this country that are the same way. Lots. That's totally possible.
Yeah. Even with the state of humanity, with like being so dependent on like working 9 to 5s with a certain routine, do you think it's possible for them to just break out of that within?
We're
like, a
seeing
short period of
that
time?
even with COVID.
Yeah.
So many people are working from home now, and the hours are way different. You know what I mean? People have a lot more flexibility. I think it's actually fantastic that happened on a certain level as someone who has worked as an independent person and still put in like 8 hours of work every day, but sometimes you start at 1 in the afternoon. Sometimes you're able to start at 9 in the morning. You know what I mean? But to have that flexibility in your day and still to get your work done, I think is really good. Yeah. It's way more like, I don't know. It is like we were talking about freedom. A big one for me is having the ability to wake up when I damn well please. Sometimes it's noon. Often it's 8, but I love to have that flexibility. Like I know like the poor 9 to 5ers, like they gotta get up no matter what, no matter how they're feeling, even if their body's really not wanting to go and it needs some more rest. You can't get it. You gotta wait till the weekend,
And then somehow the weekend doesn't provide any rest either.
Well, that's the thing though. But that's again that personal take on what is free, what is real freedom in your life and in your lifestyle. And those are big ones for me.
Well, one thing I do think is that whenever you're taking time doing something, you're equally taking that same amount of time not doing something else. So you have to really should think about what is your ultimate aim in life, right? Because, like, let's say that obviously not everyone cares about spirituality, and that's okay. But let's say that is your aim somehow. but 90% of your time is spent elsewhere, and then maybe 7% of the not 90% is like spent resting from that 90%. You got 3% left, and I don't know how you're gonna achieve your aim, man.
Yeah.
Like, if,
that's
if
where
that
the
was your
retreat
aim,
experience jumps in.
Yeah.
Because then you're doing it 24/7. You know, so you get like a jolt of it. Because in day-to-day life, it can even be tricky for people to find 20 minutes just to sit in silent meditation. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Much less like the usual 40 or 60 minutes.
And when you start trying to meditate, you realize how hard it is to really sit down. If you're not
it's
used
funny
to
like
it,
that.
it's really
it's,
hard.
Yeah. It's funny how difficult, or just kind of how frustrating it can be, you know? Where you're like, oh, I wasn't thinking I just started thinking. You know, like, fuck, you know? As soon as you want to note that you haven't been thinking, you start thinking, and then you're out of it. It's this funny, like, kind of frustrating game.
Yeah, or you think about the fact that people, all the time, they want rest. Like, I want rest from my work. I want rest from my relationships. I want rest from my family. I want rest. But then you go to meditate. Here's rest for 20 minutes. Oh, but it's hard. I want to be resting on my phone, so I can mind-numbingly not focus on my thoughts, or not try to think, or not like visualize the flowing river of my thoughts that I can't. No, I don't want to do that. I want to rest on my phone to relax.
Well, it's been proven that like sitting in a silent room requires a lot more mind energy than when a TV is in the room.
Really?
The TV is more relaxing. Yeah. And that's kind of dark.
It's kind of crazy.
It lulls you, you know.
TV's giving you information,
submission, you know. But I mean, that's really you hit on a real key point about the mind. You know, with no distractions, it starts to kind of freak out a little bit. You know, because it's not really having anything to process. It's almost like it's an ego itself, like a little person inside you that's just, when you're not using it, it's like, oh, what's up, bro? We're not going to kick it? Like, I got all kinds of stuff I could throw at you, and we could think about stuff. And you're just like, nah, you can shut up for a little while. Like, go away. And it's like, nah, dude. Like, come on, man. This is my purpose. This is what I'm here to do. And you're like, nah, I don't want to hang out. Like, fuck you. Yeah, those internal dialogues can get really funny.
Can you compare your experiences on like psychedelics to what you take from these retreats? Like
yeah, totally. I mean, I probably talked about this in the first podcast, the metaphor of the door, right? So, you know, through that door is the egoless state. Meditation, you can just walk through the door. The door is always there. With psychedelics, you just get thrown through the door, and you're in there for however long it wants to fuck with you, you know, and then it spits your ass out. You know what I'm saying? So it's just more a matter of, to me, having control over the duration, the intensity, but it's the same place that I think I get to. You know, and personally, I feel like it's the same place.
Because we were speaking to Ray Kappa from Youth of Today.
Oh, cool.
And he was talking about how you can achieve these states without that substance, something outside of yourself. You know what I mean? Just through mindful breathing and everything.
Exactly. Yeah. I had when I was a raver, there'd be times when I was like bugging out a little too hard on acid, and I'd go sit down somewhere and try to chill out. And more than once, like older guys, like hippie dudes, would come over and be like, "Hey, kid, you okay?" And I'd be like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm just fucking tripping out. I'm in the zone. It's pretty intense." And again, more than once, they would be like, "Oh, you know, have you tried meditation? Are you comfortable in that place? You know, where you're kind of egoless?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I love it." And they're like, "Oh, you're special. You should think about meditation, because if you like that place, you can go there anytime, and you don't have to deal with all this, the rush and the crowds and the, you know, the chaos of it. You know, you do it in a controlled environment." That's actually when I started taking LSD by myself, like in the afternoon, you know, away from people, doing it alone. After some of those talks with those older dudes, you know.
Yeah, you talked about how you used to do it in the woods alone.
Yeah, every Sunday, 94 and 5. Yeah, I would drop the LSD on Upper Haight, that neighborhood, and I'd walk all the way through Golden Gate Park to the beach. It's about an hour walk, and by then I'd be cooking sparkles and, you know, trails and stuff. And I would just sit in the beach and do what I was considering at that time meditation. without formal instruction, say. And then I would walk for like 5 or 6 hours back to downtown to get to my apartment. I did that, every Sunday for a few years.
Yeah, it's amazing. I was doing something similar on my bike. I would just leave the city and go upstate or Pennsylvania and take some mushrooms with the sun shining on like an open field and just, I don't know, everything would just kind of flow. You know what I mean? And
shrooms are such the better option. You know, LSD was just like, you never knew how long you were going to be blasted off for.
Can't go to sleep either.
That's the thing. Yeah, totally.
Wait, why can't you go to sleep? You just can't fall asleep?
I don't know. It just keeps you
up. Well, like often when I would like still be really high on LSD, as soon as I'd get flat and close my eyes, it was like outer space fucking fractal ride. You know what I mean? It's just so intense. You feel it in your body like you're on a roller coaster, and it's just like, what the fuck? I ain't sleeping. There's no way I'm sleeping right now. My body is in that outer universe fucking going for a ride, you know? So you just kind of have to open your eyes and just be like, fuck, all right, well, let's see. Oh, no, still going, you know? Yeah, DMT's so that way. With your eyes open, it's a completely different experience.
You feel like acid and then mushrooms is a totally different thing, or? Yeah.
I mean, again, they get you to a similar place, you know, through different streets. You know, get to the same park, let's say. But I like that mushrooms are a lot like marijuana, where it's just a plant. You just try it out. You don't have to do any prep, you know, and just eat it, or tea, you know, or whatever. There's tons of evidence that we as humans have been using mushrooms for a long, long time. I mean, it seems like every day I'm finding some new study that they're finding it in some ancient site. Because you're using DNA now to test ancient sites to see, like they did it in Pompeii. They scraped out the bottom of a lot of the ritual burners and like kind of like bongs and things, or incense containers, and they found there's all kinds of psychoactive substances that they were using. Like people in Pompeii had these like little boxes of all these different kinds of mushrooms from around the world. You know, they totally knew about all that shit and were for sure using it in their you know, religious practices, you know. Even Christianity, a lot of scholars will say there was a psychoactive substance in the Eucharist originally.
Do you think that any of it is behind Buddhism?
Well, sure. I mean, the Tibetans are well knowledged about medicinal plants and psychoactive plants. Yeah, there's a lot of specific like tantra rituals that involve specific substances. Absolutely. I think that's pretty common all over the world. You know, I mean, if you think even like if we were hunting and gathering, you know, we were gathering mushrooms, and somebody at some point must have had the balls to try one that was growing under a cow shit, you know, or some animal like it, and sure enough, it gave them a fucking thrill ride. You know what I mean? They'd be like, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to tell everybody about this shit. So I think they were, you know, that would have been a real thing. I mean, imagine, you know, 1,000 or 1,500 years ago, 2,000 ago, you have some mushrooms, you know, and you're giving them to people. Why would they not think that was an experience of God? You know, this connection. And it's through a plant. Again, I just got some wafers from a friend that are just ground up, compressed mushrooms, and they're very regular. You know what I mean? The dosage level is very regular. And I think it's great that stuff's out there, and it's been legalized in a lot of places. I don't really fuck with it myself. Again, because of the meditation things. Like the last few times I've done hallucinogens, my deep inner voice has said, bro, come on. Like, you don't need to do this. This is dumb. Like, we've been through this, you know. You've learned what you can from this. Like, quit it. You got nothing to prove, you know. And it's loud. And it really kind of ruins the high.
And you said earlier that you don't agree with everything that's in Buddhism. What are some of your disagreements? Because I have some that I thought of.
You know, I mean, sexuality is one. You know, to me, sexuality is the force of the universe that self-perpetuates us and seems like everything else. You know, I mean, I think of even exchanges of energy between non-living things, could be considered even sexual on a certain level because it's procreative. You know what I mean? And, you can't make more Buddhists if they're all celibate, And I get that in the monastic tradition, you're trying to get rid of all distractions, and sexuality is a huge one, But again, in my personal path, knowing that it's how we create each other, and just how incredible the actual experience is every time, like there's something important there, that I don't think you can just kind of turn your back on and achieve an enlightenment of the nature of God in the universe without that. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. Like, I absolutely adore Thich Nhat Hanh as a teacher, but I really don't know if he's ever had sex. I kind of doubt it, because he became a monk in his teens. He has conceded that he has an understanding of physical love in a certain way. He did have a friend that's one of his senior nuns now, and he uses that as a reference point when talking about physical love with regular lay people. But again, there's this part where he hasn't experienced something that I think is really, really fundamental to the human experience. It's almost like that with psychedelics too. Unless you've really blasted off on psychedelics, you're a virgin of sorts in my mind. You really just don't understand a huge part of how the universe works.
Yeah, you can only have, like, through observation, you can probably only learn so much.
That's the thing. Like, we could talk about sex, but actually doing it's a whole different thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that that's important. There's just those few,
So here's one of the
things that I question.
Here's one of the things that I've been thinking. So, like, I read this critique on Buddhism, and I think it was a while ago. I read in some random library, so I don't even have the book or remember.
Yeah.
I think that Nietzsche wrote it.
Okay.
But it might have been somebody else. But anyways, there's a critique on Buddhism, and one of the things that he was talking about is the fact that, so what is, when you think of, like, the Buddhist, what do they do? Like, a lot of the times you might think of a monk, you might think of someone at total peace and eradicating the things that plague common man, such as, like, watch, don't need watch, hair, don't need that, sex, don't need that, and flavor, don't need that either. Even sometimes preference, I don't need that. And I guess he starts the book by talking about, like, okay, what led this person to do this? Clearly, they can't, this is what he says, that they can't handle life the way a problem that, for example, let's say person A would handle, like, no problem, like, oh, that sucked, move forward. Maybe the person who really went to the real mountains and really just survived off of, rainwater and pine needles, they couldn't deal with regular life problems. They're almost like a weak person. This is what he's saying. Number one.
Sure.
And then number two, in terms of the letting go of all attachments, all desires, and all, that is the very thing that makes us human, they say. So you let go of all these things. Are you just, like, not even, are you just letting go of the human experience?
Sure.
You're letting go,
Sure.
You're running from, I'm putting in
Right.
quotes, life itself. You're running from life
Yeah.
itself. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the Buddhist rebuttal to that would be, again, that ability to choose. To choose how you respond to your thoughts, how you respond to the world, how you respond to all the complexity, and whatnot. And you could see it as running away, or you could see it as focusing attention. You know what I mean? So again, it's just kind of on you if you feel like it's benefiting your life, or you're just running away from things. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure a lot of the monks all over the world, Buddhist monks, are going through that, wondering. And that's, again, that where I would probably enjoy and thrive a monastery situation. But again, I don't think that's what I was put on this world to do. I have these artistic talents that can somehow get attention from people and have given me a livelihood that's different, And I'm just more kind of rolling with that intuition and seeing how my life pans out. I try to remind myself too, the Buddha was not trying to make Buddhists. He was trying to make Buddhas. you know, just as much as I think Jesus was doing the same, trying to make Christs, not Christians, you know, like leaders, not followers, you know. I feel like both of them were very clear about that, you know, and that gets terribly misinterpreted, you know.
Yeah, kind of on the same wave. It's like so another quote was that the cessation of suffering can be attained by renouncement or letting go of this tanha. And then I looked up tanha, and then it's defined as a tanha is a concept referring to thirst, desire, longing, greed, either physical or mental. And they say that there's 3 types of tanhas or cravings. Kama tanha, which is craving of sensual pleasure, bhava tanha, which is craving of existence, and then vibhava tanha, which is craving of non-existence. So basically, you crave 3 things: sensual pleasure, existence, or non-existence. And that they said that the way to eradicate suffering is by renouncement of these 3 things you crave. So if you don't crave these 3 things, how do you progress in life? You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of the progression you
well,
make.
again, you know, is it important to progress in life? What does that mean? You know, in the materialistic world, it's accumulation of goods and money, right? But to a Buddhist, they're not thinking that way, you know? They're in the present moment. They're not considering the future. It's a big difference, right? They're really living in the present, and they live in the present constantly. So it's a whole different paradigm, really, you know? And again, until you experience that for yourself, you really just don't have any understanding of how that goes. I mean, it seems like it would be difficult to give up all that stuff, but for a lot of them, it's just not. You know, it's just they've found faith in Buddhism, like I have found faith in it, and it's Buddhist faith is different than Christian faith, where the faith I have in Buddhism is because it shows that it works in my life, right? And because it shows, I have more faith in it. Whereas Christian faith is more like this faith in something outside of you, outside of your experience that you're hoping for, you know, that you're going to get some reward by doing the right thing. You know, it's kind of the opposite, really.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's so different.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just how it is. I mean, there's a lot of words out there that, you know, looking at it one way can have opposite meaning, you know? Yeah, for sure. But again, I think that's where the monks come in, where it has brought them peace and ease, you know, and that's why they continue to do it, you know. And really becoming a monk is a huge fucking deal.
It's huge.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, again, removing distractions, you no longer have a family.
Yeah. You're not just removing
You're not
the bad.
supposed to talk to your family, have any contact with them in most sects for at least 7 years.
And also your hobbies.
You know, they go through a ceremony where they treat you as dead.
Who does?
Know? Often the families do. You know, it's a practice called a year to live. And, you know, you basically, you make your peace with the world, and you act as if you're going to be dead. And after the end of that year, you're pretty egoless. You're raw and ready to jump into monastic practice.
Well, you got to think, someone who's willing to really renounce their family, their friends, and the foods they love, the hobbies that they love, and their passions. You're not just renouncing like your traffic on the way to work. You're renouncing you're probably renouncing more good shit. You're probably renouncing more good shit than bad shit.
Again, that's where I'm at. Like when I come home from a retreat, I realize that all the things in my life I'm choosing to interact with. And I love those things. I love them. I love bicycling and skateboarding and painting and drawing and all of that stuff. Listening to music really fucking loud, smoking weed, you know? Like, yeah, I love all that. And I love having the ability to choose and to, again, find my middle path in the midst of this modern society, you know, and try to find some ease in it.
Have you heard of that thing, like the Kali Yuga?
Sure.
Do you think that we're really in an age of like fucking confusion and this is like the Kali Yuga, or do you think that that's a misrepresentation? It all depends on how you look at things.
Well, yeah, I like Terence McKenna's theory, you know, of the rise and fall of civilizations. It's kind of on a wave. Even the whole age of Aquarius is similar to Kali Yuga, that we're at the end of a dark phase, and then something cataclysmic important is going to change, and we'll be in this whole next stage of humanity. It does seem like we're kind of poised for that. I don't know how it's going to pan out or when or any of that, but we're definitely in a dark time. It seems like there's people who are desperate to hold on to the control that they have, knowing that it's inevitably gonna be lost to them. Like, even politically, if I'm correct, we could check it maybe, the age group from 18 to 40 years old in America right now outnumbers everybody 40 and above. So in a voting democratic society like ours, it no longer matters what anybody 40 and above wants or believes in. The kids run it straight up, So I'm kind of more watching to see when the young people under 40 realize the power that they really have, because they really could just take everybody out and put new people in, really have the power to just fuck the whole system and, start over, which again could be even a darker time in the transition, I think it's going to be a technological thing that's going to change things hugely, something like AI. I was just talking to a friend about the scientists in Santa Barbara that are trying to communicate with dolphins and whales using technology, using AI. That's something that could really change our whole perspective on humanity. If the dolphins and the whales have been keeping an oral history and they haven't changed as a species for way longer than us, they'd be able to tell us about us in a way that would just change how we think about ourselves, I mean, really, we can't communicate with a single other species, but the dolphins and the whales have the enlarged brain cavities, just like us. We're the only 3 species on the planet. It's a dumb, funny thing, right? Like kooky hippie shit. But boy, it's intriguing to my mind, like the possibilities. And I was just seeing dolphins yesterday at the beach. Like they're coming around. They haven't been hunted for decades now, so they feel safe. There's generations of them that have felt safe around humans again. So it's just one of those things.
But within the golden age, not the golden, the Kali Yuga, the age of confusion, if I'm not mistaken, there is a golden age where people are waking up and feeling more enlightened than before.
And I do see that.
So I feel like that the powers that be, maybe they're so enhanced, let's say like the negative side, because the other side of the yin and yang is growing also, like the good, you know what I mean? So there's like an extreme power right now, like can't even put this in words.
no it's a conflict. It's a terrible, troubling conflict right now,
and I feel like a lot of people are feeling that. A lot of people we've talked to that don't even know about spirituality or this or that. They just see that there is like 2 sides of the coin right now that are like meshing, and like you said, it might be the end of a certain period of time, a certain age,
No, that's just it. My Buddhist teachers are still ever hopeful, ever optimistic that the change is coming, and especially like I say with the generational change, of the young people. I mean, just so outnumbering everybody else. I mean, it's funny to me now. My parents were baby boomers when when my parents were born, right after World War II. That was a big population explosion, but man, every generation since has been way bigger than that. We don't only talk about it, but that was a big thing we talked about when I was a kid. Just how are we going to feed all these people? It's like we couldn't have possibly anticipated how much the population would grow. And I feel like that's a lot of the problems, the push, and I'm curious to see how it pans out. You know, I
wonder
hope it doesn't become violent. You know,
I wonder if in our lifetime we'll see a huge change in our just society in a way.
Well, huge
we're
change
we're
happens
seeing
over.
it right now, though.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
There's little things at work
Little
that are.
increments,
I mean, even I had a lengthy conversation with friends yesterday about blockchains and NFTs and that whole world. It's the future for sure, you know, and it's not controlled by financial institutions and governments.
Something like cryptocurrency and
That's
stuff.
the thing.
Yeah.
It's this new thing, and it makes sense that it will be the future.
Some people
you know?
say it's like a spiritual thing, the cryptocurrency in a way.
Well, that's the thing. It's from what I'm understanding, it's remedying a lot of the problems and errors of the past in basic systems. You know, just in the like for artists, because of the blockchain, you can keep an eye on what you sell, and you also can get a royalty each time it's sold. And that's a huge difference than the usual fine art world, where when you sell the piece, it's done. You don't get any money on what it's sold for afterwards, you know? And that's just a huge revolution in how art business is worked out. And that the artists themselves can basically have the gallery and not have to rely on anybody even for that. Like, man, yeah. Like, I could see... That's the thing. Galleries really... normally they take 50% of the sales of your artwork. And that's less and less wise these days. If you just have your own online store, you get 100% of the value of the thing right to yourself. You know, so that's a huge change, you know?
My experience with like the cryptocurrency and all that, I found it like almost a turnoff, to be honest, because like I downloaded Coinbase and I monitored like it changing. And when I first downloaded it, I used to work with this guy that made hundreds of thousands of dollars on it because he got onto it early, and now the percentages went up. But what I found that bothered me when I downloaded it, I would be constantly checking like, oh, it went up $1, it went down $1, and I noticed it would like almost cloud my mental. I was so worried about like how much money I had, and I was just so worried, honestly, over and over. So I finally just took everything out and just like, but now I don't know if I regret it now. I don't know.
But that's being a wise person.
Yeah,
you realized you were being distracted by something imaginary, basically, and it was taking over space in your mind, and it just at a certain point you were like, enough.
Yeah, but then I talked to him, and he wouldn't say that's wise, because you're like, yo, if you just stayed in it, you would have tripled your profits.
Depends what your aims are.
Yeah.
If your aim is to get rich, might not be wise. If your aim is to clear your mind, it's probably wise.
Yeah,
Exactly. Everybody's got their own motivations. Yeah, for sure. I mean, because people are often asking me why I'm not taking advantage of these kind of new opportunities and things. I don't need to, frankly. Again, the freedom part. I have the freedom to say no. I get offered so much freelance work that I'm just like, no. I don't need to do that. You know, it kind of sucks to draw stuff for other people at this point, when I know I can just draw whatever the fuck I want.
You set
put
a
it on
limit.
posters and boom, I'm good. I can, every drawing I do, I can usually get almost $4,000 out of it between selling the original and doing posters. That's what I'm saying. That is fucking crazy amazing.
Some people
and I
could live a
control
whole year
all
off
of it.
4,000.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. Again, the freedom. Like at 50 years old now, I feel like I have a lot of freedom, and I have some backup plans if anything changes. I've always got trades that I can fall back on, that still have value. But, in the meantime, I'm just going to keep on trucking.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. I love seeing people from the graffiti, skateboard, art, music, and just that side of the world that has meant so much to me and pretty much made me who I am. I love when I see them make that shit happen. So it's awesome to see that happen. And I just have to say, thank you for letting us here and just doing this episode. It's been an honor for us.
It's cool to meet you guys in person.
Yeah, 100%.
Sit across the table from each other.
Yeah,
I much prefer that.
100%.
Dude, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Hearing
bro.
about all this
anytime.
is like an inspiration, especially to younger.
It's fun talking to you guys about this stuff. It's something I find myself talking to people about a lot, the Buddhist stuff, especially lately. People got time on their hands to sit with their, or not, right?
Yeah, or not.
Or just like, Mike, I want to stop thinking so much. This is driving me crazy. I got way too much free time.
Yeah, it's a powerful topic, I think, nowadays, because people are feeling this more than putting it into words like I can't do. Yeah, for sure. It's cool. So many people took psychedelics for the first time last year. I think that's so great. It's like everybody lost their job. I'm like, fuck it, let's do mushrooms. Yeah, I didn't know that. It's amazing.
That's great.
Yeah.
Again, like a lot of people are waking up, even in the midst of this dark time.
That's what I was talking about earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, bro. Thank you so much, bro.
It's all good, man. Thank you.
Thank
Peace.
you.